My name is Karis and I just recently completed the IB MYP. If you're starting the MYP from MYP 4 or going into MYP 5, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to be sharing things I wish I knew before I started the MYP, from how to actually study and how to survive the eAssessment, personal projects, and more. Plus, I have some tips from my very good classmates and a big surprise for you at the end. So, stay tuned. I'm assuming that you're already familiar with the MYP, but if you're just coming into it, here are some important things. The Middle Years Program MYP is part of the International Baccalaureate IB system designed for students aged 11 to 16, typically MYP 1 to MYP 5. It focuses on helping students develop critical thinking, global awareness, and strong academic and personal skills. In MYP 4 and 5, each student picks a subject from 8 subject groups. Language and literature, which is your main language like English. Language acquisition, in which you learn a foreign language like French or Spanish. Individuals and societies, which include subjects like history, geography, and economics. The sciences, which include biology, chemistry, physics, or you could study integrated sciences. Mathematics, which you could do at the standard or extended level. And then we have the ePortfolio subjects, in which you can choose from 3 ePortfolio subject groups, which is the arts, which include music, visual arts, or drama. Design, which you could do as product design or digital design, or physical and health education, or PHE. Some schools also offer the interdisciplinary learning, IDL, as a separately assessed subject in MYP 5. It combines 2 different subject groups. In addition to the academic subjects, students must also complete their personal projects and service as action requirements of their school. Each subject is assessed on 4 criteria, which differ based on the subject group. For example, the assessment criteria for mathematics are Criterion A, knowing and understanding, Criterion B, investigating patterns, Criterion C, communicating, and Criterion D, applying maths in real-life contexts. In assessments, achievement levels range from 0, the lowest, to 8, the highest, for each criterion. At the end of the MYP, there is an optional on-screen assessment for students called the eAssessment, which assesses each subject. In the eAssessment, your total mark is converted to an achievement level from 1, the lowest, to 7, the highest. You also receive a level for your personal projects and ePortfolio report. To receive the MYP certificate, you must achieve at least a level 3 in all subjects, including the personal project and ePortfolio, and score at least a 28 out of a possible 56. You can be on your way to get a 50 plus score in the MYP from MYP 4, as this is where we meet most of the certificate requirements. To start working towards that 50 plus score in the eAssessment, here are the things you should start doing in MYP 4. Number 1, building a good work ethic. Don't slack off on your assignments and make sure that they are the best they can be. One thing I want many people to know is that they shouldn't be content with getting a level 4 constantly or a level 5. You should always be reaching for level 6, 7, and even 8. Make sure you do your work so that it could get an 8. Always be doing level 8 work. Make good notes and keep them well. In my school, we used a lot of slides to learn. So we would come into class and the teacher would put the slides on the board and they would explain the slides. And they would also give us the slides to study. And one thing that I did, which I think really helped me, was I would take the slides and then make my own notes from it. And so writing it down in your notebook, writing the slides down, like the information on the slides into your notebook, will help you use brain power and you memorize it faster than if you were just studying and you just look at the slides and be reading it. That is passive learning. You need to be doing active learning for you to get better memorization and understanding. So make your own notes and just don't rely on the slides given to you by teachers. Number 3, study each subject frequently and not when you have summatives or even formatives coming up. This helps you build familiarity with the content of each subject. So just imagine you're about to write a summative and you are night before and now come to open your notes and start reading. If you had started reading maybe 1 week or 2 weeks before you start reading your notes frequently, before you would have already been familiar with everything that's in your notebook, all the content, and so it wouldn't take as much time for you to understand and be able to reproduce what you have understood in the. Number 4, do eAssessment past questions on topics that you're covering in class, because your teachers may give such questions to you as in summatives. My teacher did that a lot, especially when I was in MYP 4. So if you start doing eAssessment past papers before you actually start at eAssessment, you get to be familiar with how the IB assesses each subject and how it asks questions, so that you'll be more prepared for the subject exam at the end of MYP 5. You can find past questions and other helpful materials at this website. I'll put it in the description. And when practicing past paper questions, look out for the command terms. Make sure you understand the command terms for each subject, and also look out for the marks awarded for each question, so that you can tailor your response in a way that gets you the highest possible mark. Make sure you practice a lot for each subject and every topic. Most textbooks that you're given have questions at the end of each topic, so you could do them to check your understanding and also to prepare for summatives and even the eAssessments coming up. There are also some helpful websites which I'll talk about more later in this video. For service as action, you can look out for problems in your school community and spread awareness about them. So I did that by making posters and giving presentations at assembly, and that counts for your service as action. Now it's time for tips for MYP 5. We'll start with the personal project, which for most schools do it in MYP 5, but for my school, we did it we started in MYP 4 and completed in MYP 5, which really helped. So you have to start planning for it early, because it's a really important part of the MYP, and it will give you a whole 7 marks, a full 7 points in your final score. So I think it was one of the best parts, like one of my favorite parts about the MYP, because you got to choose a project that you had an interest in, make it a task school project. So that was my first time doing such a thing, and I really enjoyed it. So I advised that you do a project which means you use a skill that you love doing, but also challenges you a bit, so you build on that skill. Make sure you utilize all available resources such as personal project exemplars and tips from your coordinator to make sure that your documentation is the best it can be, because the examiners must look at the documentation more than the final product, so you have to pay special attention to that. Also, you also have to pick a supervisor for your personal project, and it helps to pick a supervisor which has at least some level of knowledge in your project. So for example, I wrote a short story for my personal project, and my supervisor was teacher of language and literature. So when I was done with my story, I gave it to him, and he was able to proofread it and give me writing tips to make it even better. So it helps if the supervisor you pick has like at least some experience with what your project's about. Make sure your report follows the strand descriptors well, and ask your coordinator if you need clarifications on how to make your report the best possible. Speaking of which, do that for all subjects, especially ePortfolio subjects, which also takes a full 7 marks to your final score. You have to write a report and make a piece depending on which ePortfolio subject you choose. So make sure you really pay attention to when your teachers are giving you tips on how to make your reports better. And also, if you need to learn a new skill for your product, make sure you start doing research into it or start practicing early, so you spend less time doing your product for your ePortfolio. But also remember, the documentation is really, really important, so pay attention to that. Take all good advice from your teachers, and never procrastinate on the personal project or the ePortfolio. Never procrastinate on it, or you'll end up regretting it. Thank you for experience. Now that the MYP core is out of the way, the eAssessment is here, which you'll be taking at the end of MYP 5 if your school has that. So it helps to start preparing for the eAssessment early, because there's no surefire way to predict what will come in the exam. They could bring anything from MYP 1 to MYP 5. They could bring anything in a subject. I'll be making a subsequent video in which I break down each subject eAssessment paper and what you should expect in each criteria, so subscribe! But here's a very important eAssessment tip that actually saved my exams. It's a pattern that I noticed. On most papers, the final questions are that which assess criterion D, which is often the applications of principles. Every paper has its unique global context, which remember is a core component of the MYP. Every unit in every subject is connected to a global context. So knowing the global context for your year can help you know what topics may come in the exam. The other criteria A, B, and C, may have questions from other global contexts, but criterion D always has questions from the global context of that year. Always. So for example, my assignment that I wrote this year, which is the May 2025 paper, the global context was scientific and technical innovations. I think there are about 7 global contexts. So I prepared for units in that global context, especially helpful for history and French, as the essay questions were on technology. You can find the global context from your teacher's lesson plan and most importantly from the textbooks. So the best MYP textbook you could use for that is the Hodder Education textbooks. Okay, now we come to how to study for the eAssessment. So this is just my personal study style when I was writing the eAssessment. So a month of the exam, you should be done with the topics of each subject. So you must prioritize revision rather than learning new things. So make a weekly study plan which outlines topics you want to cover each session. Make sure it's doable and not so intense so you can get the most out of your sessions without feeling drained. And focus mostly on weaknesses and don't spend all your time studying things that you are really good in. So make sure you can strengthen your weaknesses before. A few weeks before the assessment, start doing timed papers. So you take a full paper, you sit down. I think for most subjects it's 2 hours. 2 hours, you just do the paper as if you were in the actual exam hall writing it. And after, you can go mark it yourself and see where you went wrong and work on that. Make sure you practice daily so you don't become blunt a few days before the exam and start learning everything. So here are some websites and resources that I use to study personally. I'll put the links for all of them in the description. So first is Cognito, which is an educational YouTube channel for the GCSE Science and Mathematics. It explains concepts simply and has a website where you can practice. It's extremely helpful for someone who does all 3 sciences and extended mathematics. So make sure to check them out, really helpful. So it's for the GCSE. Things in GCSE it's also taught in the MYP. So for Kognity, it's a digital curriculum and online learning platform for all subjects. You can learn topics and practice questions per subject. So it's a paid resource which schools mostly provide. So check if your school provides that. So iMath is also an interactive math learning website with lessons and practice questions, but it's also paid for by your school. So Quizlet making flashcards. I think most people know about Quizlet. It's making flashcards that you can use to learn and quiz yourself. It's really helpful if you're learning stuff like vocabulary and definitions. Physics and math tutor teaches for sciences and mathematics. It contains question papers and math scripts for most of the sciences and mathematics. And also, I personally learn using ChatGPT. It's helpful for explaining concepts and asking further questions. It can also help you make study guides and plans, practice questions, and help you proofread work. And they have recently added the study mode, which I encourage everyone to use as it is so helpful for learning. So here's some advice from some of my good friends who went through MYP with me. Really smart, listen to them.
Alright, before I started MYP, I wish I knew how to study. You know, when you're doing the IGCSEs and other curriculum, majority of the requirements is just knowing and understanding, answer this, what is this, what is that. But MYP is not like that direct. MYP is more of skill based, so you need to really have the skills when you're writing exams and stuff. For example, in the sciences, the actual knowledge-based questions were just criterion A, and that's just 25% of your marks. A whole 50% of your marks was actually knowing how to design experiments and analyze results. So practicing those skills is extremely necessary in order to do well with MYP. So as the first timer coming to MYP, it's extremely essential that you polish on those skills, those skill-based things, and also just understand how the nuances of each subject work. For example, for the humanities, understand how to design investigations. Scientists, how to design experiments and analyze results. Mathematics, how to investigate patterns. Doing all of these things will actually be an extremely good way to boost your points. And apart from this, the other thing I wish I knew was the written coursework. So in MYP, you actually have to do 2 pieces of written coursework. First, your ePortfolio, your personal project. These things are prepared by yourself over the course of the academic year and then internally assessed by the IB. So one good thing that you should do is to make sure you perform extremely well in these ePortfolio and you have all the resources to actually do it in them. So make sure you take it seriously because they can be a very good way to boost your points because they each carry 7 points like a regular subject. So if you get 7 in your ePortfolio and 7 in your PP, you've boosted your total points by a whole 14 marks, and that's quite good. So yeah, I wish I knew these things before I started MYP.
Hi, this is Nanajwa. To all those starting MYP 4 or 5, here's something I wish I knew. Don't wait until exam season to figure things out, alright? Seriously, like build your habits early. Even just reviewing your notes every Sunday makes such a huge difference. And don't be afraid to ask, in quotes, dumb questions, because that's just how you learn. God helped me with everything, so be intentional about Him in all that you do. And use your strengths to carry your confidence. But please spend time where you're weak because MYP isn't just about grades. It's about figuring out how you work best. The faster you learn that, the smoother everything else gets in preparation towards DP and basically everything. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Hard work is really important, but remember to get some rest if you're tired. Don't only focus on academics in MYP4. Make sure you do sports and have a healthy social life as well. Because if you're continuing into the diploma program, which is DP, things are going to get a lot harder. So start building your time management skills now, but then also don't neglect other parts of your life. But at the same time, you also have one chance to write the eAssessment. And when you submit your reports, it's all been decided. So work hard. Like, it may feel very excruciating, working hard towards the eAssessment and everything, but when you see your results, you know that it's all worth it and it's done forever. That could be comforting and scary at the same time that it's done when you see your results. So that said, I wish you guys all the best. If you have any questions, put them in the comments and I'll make sure to answer them to the best of my abilities. There's also another YouTube channel that talks about the MYP. I'll put the link in the description. Please make sure to check her out as well. Shout out to Dina and Najwa for their tips. Thank you, friends. And also for all of you guys who have watched to the end, I have a surprise for you. I have uploaded all the resources I used throughout my journey in MYP 4 and 5, including slides, worksheets, textbooks, and guides, all for you. The link is in the description. So give it your all. And I actually wish this video was here when I was starting MYP 4 and 5, but like, so go for it. Make me proud and get that 56, okay? Bye!